We'll begin with the flag salute. You please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome everybody to the July 22nd Marion County Commission meeting. We'll begin with public comments. So, anyone wish to make public comments?
I do.
Could you please come up to the table and
From there.
a camera for online people.
Please state your name too.
Arlene Sticka. I am wondering if anybody is aware of the camping situation out at the county lake. What has appeared to me is that there are several out-of-county residents that are using the campground kind of like a permanent fixture for themselves. One couple in particular has two campers. They come in under two different names. One will bring their camper in, say for 2 weeks, and then they'll swap out with the other camper under a different name. And that way they keep that one spot permanently where it's not available to anybody else. There's a couple others that are basically doing the same thing. One I noticed finally left yesterday. But there's another one, he's from Sedgwick County, or at least that's what his tag says. And he's been there, I don't know exactly how long. I came in on June 27th, and he was there at that time. I don't have a problem if you need to, and that's probably where you need to change the rules, where if someone comes in and they stay on one campground for 14 days and then move to another campground on the same lake, I don't have a problem with that if that helps bring in extra money. But when they start thinking that this spot is only mine and nobody else can have it, that is a problem. And that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you. Any other public comments? Yes. Same process. Come up to me and you're welcome to sit if you want.
She stood though.
Oh, okay.
I'll stand too.
Okay.
My name is Justin Cobb. I work for the Nature Conservancy in Kansas. We're a conservation nonprofit. Have about 30 staff across the state. Staff range from biologists to rangeland specialists. We've got some row crop folks on board as well. And so we are also, as part of our mission, we are one of the larger land trusts in the state. So we do hold and administer conservation easements. We know that you guys have been talking about those a lot, and you're doing some more deliberations later on the agenda today. We just wanted to be available as a resource for any questions that you guys have on the technical side, what we see in our experience, and we're happy to provide recommendations or case studies that we've experienced otherwise. But so I'd be happy to share thoughts or answer questions at the appropriate time from you all.
Okay. Could you leave your contact information with our administrator?
Yes, sir.
That'd be great. Thank you. Any other public comments? Not seeing any in the room. If there's any.
Yes, hello.
Okay, that's where we were going to online. Okay. Steve.
Okay. Good afternoon. Steve Schmidt. Whoops, I lost it here. Oh my. Wait a second. There we go. Steve Schmidt, Marion County landowner residing in Heston. First thing, I want to apologize to Tina Spencer. I like to submit my comments in writing ahead of time in case technology outsmarts me, and I was late getting those to her, so apologize for that. You probably have my written comments. I just want to highlight a few things very briefly. There's all sorts of different types of conservation easements out there. And when I say conservation easement, for me, I'm talking about an agricultural conservation easement as described in Mr. Jantz's handout and without any government participation. I thought Mr. Jantz's handout description of a privately funded and voluntarily negotiated agricultural conservation easement is as good a description as I have seen, and I really appreciated him including that. In the fourth whereas of the draft resolution, I suggest you think about adding what I think are the biggest threats to ranch land, and that's noxious weeds and invasive species, which often already come from undisturbed and improperly managed property in this county, whether it's a conservation easement or not. Draft resolution, the 13th whereas relating to property tax. While the agricultural conservation easement may reduce the fair market value, it does not reduce the property tax. The property tax on agricultural land is determined by a formula based on the type of agricultural use, not the fair market value. And I think it was pointed out in Mr. Jantz's handout that sometimes a reduced fair market value can someday be a huge benefit to a young rancher if they can get good grazing land below fair market value. I'd like your help this afternoon, later in the meeting, if you could have Mr. Jantz clarify Article 6. To me, the majority of the resolution seemed to focus on opposition to federal land acquisition in Marion County, including conservation easements, to achieve those 30 by 30 goals. But it seems to me that Article 6 kind of gets away from that focus and gives the county approval, disapproval power over any and all easements. So if you could and would ask Mr. Jantz to describe his thinking and intent of that Article 6 and how it might affect someone like me who wants to put an agricultural conservation easement on their property. As I've said before, I don't want the solution to this federal overreach to end up being county overreach. And
Steve, I hate to cut you off, but that's our 3-minute time limit. We do have your written copy of comments. And
okay,
I
thanks.
think you hit the highlights on the first page, so.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, anyone else online wishing to make public comments? Tamara?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I've attended a couple meetings now, but I'll introduce myself again. My name is Tamara Hillman, and I'm a conservation easement specialist. For full disclosure, I am working with the Schmitz with their properties project, just to be clear with that, and to not, belabor the same points, but I do support everything that Steve has said about the conservation easements. And I'm not going to, have an opinion on 30 by 30 one way or the other. But just specifically to the easements, I do think with the draft resolution and opinions I've heard elsewhere in general, there's a misconception that an easement means that no management can be done on a property and that it's being taken out of working lands. And there's just a variety of easement types. And so that's not necessarily always true. And, a landowner should work closely with their land trust to, develop their deed terms that allow them to continue managing their property responsibly. And often an easement is going to assist in keeping that property in a good condition, whether that's agriculture, row crop, ranching, or if it's containing noxious weeds and like that. There are often, management plans that are developed by the landowner or with the landowner and the land trust together so that they can maintain that goal going forwards, and that property is going to be kept in good condition. So I just wanted to clarify that there's often this misconception, especially with federal easements. There are federal easements and private easements, so there's a difference there too. But sometimes I know people have purchased property that has, a wetland easement that's with NRCS, and they think that they can't do anything at all, which isn't fully true. You can do and should do management on those properties. You just have to work with NRCS to get a compatible use agreement, which I could go into details on, but won't bore you with today. And lastly, I'll just say again, I'm also happy to be a resource for any questions on the conservation easements. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate it, Tamara. Thank you. Anyone else online wishing to make comments? All right, not seeing any. Move into agenda approval. Any additions or changes to the agenda?
Yeah, like to add down there somewhere, either after noxious weed or after Brad, whether he's done, just the Burns fiber project down.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, any other additions to the agenda? Okay, not seeing any. The agenda stands approved with the addition from Commissioner Dalton. We're ready to move into administrative business. Ashley.
All right, I have the minutes of July 15.
Okay, Commission's had a chance to review the minutes of July 15th. Any additions or corrections?
To approve.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Gehring to approve the minutes, a second by Commissioner Dalkey. Any other discussion? Not all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carried 5-0.
Sorry.
Then I have some change orders.
No, she's not.
She does not.
She does it on purpose. Okay, do we sign each of these? Oh, there's a cover sheet,
Yeah.
sorry. Got it. Okay. Prior year, previous year.
I'll just prior.
Okay. Sticky note.
Mineral taxes went back to the landowner, that's a good thing. That's coming from an oil.
That's where they need to be.
The renter. The landowner's always there. He's sold it. Just wants to fight you on everything.
Usually out of state.
All right, next I have early checks in the amount of $15,444.50.
Any questions on the invoices attached to the early checks?
Motion to approve.
Okay, motion from Commissioner Gehring to approve checks in the amount of $15,444.50, second by Commissioner Becker. Questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed nay. Motion carried 5-0.
And that's all I have.
I see early voting started, so
Yes.
thank you.
Yes.
Urge people to participate.
Yes, we will.
Commissioner Becker said it well last week.
You voted, good job.
All right, Tina, administrative report.
Okay, in your packet, you did have the emergency management department update for the past 6 months, basically, so that was in there. I also sent you a separate email that had the hazard mitigation plan for the region. That was a very lengthy
Yeah.
700.
document. So that is subject to approval today when Marcy's here. Let's see.
Hopefully she can condense it.
In your packet, you had Article 10, which is the floodplain regulations. And as you know, you adopted a resolution to adopt the floodplain regulations based on incorporating the new flood maps. However, FEMA is requiring the board to actually sign the article itself as well as the resolution. And so I do have that page for your signature.
So we've
Again, this is already approved, they just asked for a signature page on the actual article.
check the box. I think there was.
Majority? Was it a majority?
Unanimous.
Oh. I think it was unanimous, actually.
Just. Sure.
Okay.
Want everything to jive.
What?
Said wanting everything to jive.
Okay. You had my administrative report in the packet. We've had a pretty busy week and we've been making some progress on some items. Does anyone have questions about anything that was in the administrative report?
Grounds look great.
I think that'll be good, especially when it grows in and fills in a little bit more.
Landscaping is very nice. I didn't get to see the tree removal, but I'm thinking.
So the trees are down, the stumps will be taken out next weekend.
It just looks like a maintenance cost is gonna go way down from what you did.
Yeah.
So.
A lot easier to maintain, better look. Any other questions on the administrative report? Okay, thank you, Tina.
You're welcome. Everything else in your packet that I put in there, I believe, are items that are scheduled agenda items, so that's all I have.
Crystal, what's it?
Actually, we got 10 minutes. Randy, would you want to give your update on the roads?
Yeah, sure would. I was contacted Friday that the R. Kelly picked that site to be built out from Whitewater, Elbing, and then on over to Burns. And then again today, the Ideotech people called today and let me know that it was chosen to go in. They'll visit us a little later when they get things laid out and how they're gonna go about the project, so. And he was also talking about other things maybe up in Marion County too, so. So anyway, it's on the way, they picked it, and sounds like Burns will receive some fiber optic lines someday. I don't know how soon, so.
It's good news. Again, promise funding anyway.
And Butler County did, they first heard they, they have a co-op deal that they have.
Oh, yes.
Well, they went, turned around and sent a letter of support for it too.
Good.
Back it, so.
Good.
Well, that's great news. All right, I see Krista's out in the hallway. Would you be ready, Krista?
Ready?
It's unusual, but we're actually ready ahead of schedule.
We've got a full house today, don't we?
Yeah. Don't mean to rush you, but we're.
Oh, no, I'm good.
Let you get in and back to work.
Just couldn't hear.
Great.
I'm not sure what all is in each of the packets or.
So in the packet, we have our previous charter resolution,
Okay.
the suggested one, and then the Harvey County documentation and their
Okay.
resolution. I did not put the agreements in that you brought to me in the packet, but I did.
Okay. Well, I'm going to start with the contracts. I've got two contracts here. The first one is for the Marion County Special Ed Co-op. And it's for hearing and vision screening. And the contract is for the Special Ed Co-op to pay the health department $7,500 for the services. Last year, we reevaluated them. Last year, we went up on price. This year, we've kept it the same. So, and here are,
Two halves.
what did you say?
Payable.
Yes, pay in two parts.
Not in here, because I just got it today. Okay.
Okay, any questions for Krista on the contract?
Same price we've been doing.
It was the same price from last year. Last year we went up just to cover the cost.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve the contract?
Make that
Motion
motion
by
to approve the
Commissioner.
contract.
Mr. Dalkey, is there a second? Second by Commissioner Crowfoot. Other questions or discussion? Not all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carried 5-0.
The next contract that I have is from Konza Prairie Community Health Center. They're who we are contracted with to do our registered dietitian services, which are a requirement for WIC. And they did go up. It was $350 a month, and it's $375. Tracy, who is the WIC coordinator there, she said that they have increased their price due to the change in education level. I guess all registered dietitians now have to be a master's level. This is also, it's paid for through our WIC federal grant money that we get.
WIC exceeds $4,500 a year.
Say that again.
Does that exceed $4,500 a year, WIC, the WIC funds that we get?
Does it exceed $4,500 a year? Yeah, last year, I think, or this, so it's a federal fiscal year that we get the WIC funds on. And I believe we got total with our breastfeeding peer counselor over $100,000 for WIC funds.
That's exceeded.
Yeah, you could have just left it.
So here, I'll pass that
Just
down.
just
So this is $4,500, but paid for out of a fund that can handle it.
And that's built into, when we figure, I just did the WIC budget for the state, and that's figured into there. We did not figure for 375 because we didn't know that the pricing changed. But we'll take it from another area on the WIC money. If you run out, let me know.
Make a motion to allow Krista. Go ahead and sign. Looks like it's.
Motion by Commissioner Gehring to approve the agreement between Prairie Community Health Center and the Marion County Health Department authorizing the director to sign. Is there a second? Second. Second by Commissioner Becker. Any further questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carried 5-0.
The next thing I've got is the Kansas Public Health Roadshow. And is that?
Yes, we got-
They all have that on the
You got a
table.
copy?
So this event was created by KDHE, and it's specifically to provide education to commissioners, to county administrators, even city administrators. Candidates running for commission would even have the opportunity to come. There's a free meal involved. They're doing it across the state. Yes, we're gonna blast the free meal. You know, that's what gets people to the table.
Literally.
Yes, yes. Everybody loves food. And so there's going to be conversation there. Lots of people from KDHE that are there to answer questions. They're going to talk about funding streams for public health there as well. I know that that's always a topic of conversation. And just kind of explaining, sometimes public health is hard to put into words. You know, you can explain the tangible services and that's easy, but there's lots of other things that public health does, like coalition work and improving communities. So they're going to talk about that at this meeting. But I wanted to invite each and every one of you. Hopefully this will be a great event.
Specific would be the.
Newton is the closest one that we're having,
Oh, Newton.
and it's at on September 19th.
I was looking at Manhattan, well, it's election day.
We also have one in Eureka, which is not.
How do you find where it's at in Newton?
They'll send out, so KAC also has been putting it on in their newsletter. KAC is also promoting this event.
Radio Center, I think.
You have to register first and they'll tell you where to go.
So as this is going on, Pratt might be the closest one to where I am, so.
And
If someone wants to attend, would we contact you? Would that be the way to?
there's a registration and I can sure help you get registered. And I would love to know who all is coming from
Sure.
Marion County. If you are going, please let me know, and I hope that you all can make it.
If there's more than two going at a time, Tina would be.
Yeah, if you just maybe go through me.
Okay,
And I'll
that'd
work
be-
with Krista, that way I know
There we
who's
go.
going, that would be great.
That's a good idea. Very good idea.
And then the last thing that I have is about school inspections. So as of July 1st, House Bill 2754 went into effect. Prior to 2020, counties were able to opt out under the home rule for school inspections. And Marion County had opted out previously. And then in 2020, that exemption was off the floor. So I guess 2021 because of COVID. So we started school inspections. I've done a couple years of them now. But then this bill came into effect. So I met with the superintendents in May because we knew that this had passed, but it wasn't into effect until July 1st. And Kind of got some feedback from them, asking them about school inspections, how they've gone, what are you liking, what do you not like, do you want to continue them, so I could bring it back to you all. The consensus with all 5 school superintendents was that they thought that there was some benefit in it. Also, they don't think that we should do them every year. They thought maybe every 5 years. So the examples I have in there, Harvey County just recently opted out of school inspection. And so there's a charter resolution in there from Harvey County, and but I did want to open up the floor for this and get your guys' feedback on it and see if that's something you want
So
to
is
move
that
forward with.
a resolution then that has to be redone every year, or?
No, it would stand unless the state statute changed.
It was repealed, yeah.
Or if they wanted to do it every 5th year, then in the 5th year?
I don't know if there's a way of writing it in.
More difficult.
Yeah.
Just leave it in perpetuity. Whenever you wish to go ahead and review or change it, then you can bring it up at that time.
Okay. 5
within
years is long one's out.
The CALD, so Kansas Association of Local Health Departments, we have a director that he's a political science major background. He said he's had suggested putting in may instead of shall. That way it still opens up the opportunity, let's say we get a complaint about one of the schools. So we still have an in to be able to go in and do an inspection. But aren't held to an every year basis.
Does that sound reasonable?
It does. Yeah, it's less, it gives you a little bit more flexibility if you've got those kinds of issues so that you can react to them without having to
Yes.
amend your charter.
But it would still give us the effect of basically presenting.
Yes.
And if there's a need to, we can react.
There'd probably be a little bit more language I'd put in it than what they did in Harvey County, just for that purpose. So that we have specific express guidance and reservation for that purpose.
So we could go back on the 3rd year and do it
Yes,
if we felt it necessary.
exactly.
Would there be, seem to be a consensus with the commission to exempt but use the may language instead of the shall? So if something comes up, if that's the case, then I'd make the motion to have the county councilor draft a resolution using the health department director's guidance recommendation to exempt, but allow us, if need be, to reinstate. Second by Commissioner Becker. Discussion, questions?
I did want to add in some of the reasons why others are deciding to opt out is just because the schools are already being inspected by the fire marshal.
Sure.
Kansas Department of Agriculture is inspecting the food service stuff, and so they felt as if this could be a redundant inspection. We are looking for safety stuff and sanitation things when we're going through.
Any other questions, discussion? Not all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carried 5-0. More homework.
That's it for today.
Very good. Thank you, Krista.
Thank you all.
What are some other activities you have going? I suppose this week?
This week is the fair, so another, I'd like to invite you guys to show up at the county fair. We will be there with a booth Wednesday evening. Also, we'll be on a float in conjunction with Hillsborough Community Hospital and St. Luke's Hospital. And we'll have some water at our booth, and I think that's the same night as the rodeo fair too. In September, we'll be participating in Big Truck Night, and that's with parents as teachers, and that takes place in Hillsborough. Also, please mark your calendars for the first weekend in November is the health fair. We've got some new and exciting things going on there.
Where's it at this year?
This year will be at the Sports and Aquatics. And the date for that is November 2nd. Flu shots are about to start to ramp up, and school immunizations, we're starting to see some of that as well coming through.
Hard to believe start of school's just around the corner.
I know, it's very quickly.
That health fair, that's the one where you, Saturdays.
Yes.
Gotta get through August first. So, all right, well, thank you, Krista. Hopefully it's a cool night at the fair.
Yeah, I hope so too. We're in an air-conditioned building now, so.
That is a nice feat. Very nice. Thank you, Krista. Marcy? Got some light reading for you? You printed on 786 pages.
I had to.
Brad has to read every one of them.
I appreciate that you sent it in electronic form.
Yes.
I was not gonna print another one. I have to have a copy of it in our office, but that is the only place it'll stay. I'm not gonna print off extra copies, so. I will send the PDF to anybody who wants it. After you guys adopt it, it becomes a public document, so it will be on our website. So, just real quick, I know you guys do, but there's a lot of public both online and everything. Hazard mitigation plan is, we go in with what we call Region G. It includes Butler, Cowley, Harper, Harvey, Kingman, Marion, McPherson, Reno, Rice, Sedgwick, and Sumner. And what we do is Homeland Security pays for a company to go through all of historical data and current data on what kind of disasters affect our region of the state. And then they come up with all of our different census information. They combine that with historical hazards we've had. And then they decide, okay, these are the hazards that you have for your area. And then what we do is, some of you probably filled it out. We sent out a public survey saying, what do you think our hazards of our area are? And then they took that information and added it into this hazard mitigation plan. And then we use this plan to decide what types of efforts we need to do in the county so we don't have a disastrous impact when we do have a natural disaster. And what type of natural disasters can we expect? So, I know you guys know that, but I thought I'd explain it just.
What resources we need to acquire in order to handle those hazards when.
Yeah, and we've got the reasons for the plan, the planning committee. It has all of our risk population data. It has all of our hazards charts. It has a big section on community feedback that when we send out that public survey, all the feedback from the community, and then different mitigation actions that the planning team or the different areas came up with. Like, for example, I don't tell the school districts what mitigation actions they have to have. They share with me what their mitigation actions might be, and those are included in the plan. So. Yes, the stakeholders are listed in here as well. And a lot of times your stakeholders, if you guys remember when we do any type of grants, FEMA requires that you have a hazard mitigation plan. That's one of those boxes you have to check on the grants. So this is the new one. It'll be for the next 5 years, and then we'll have to do this process all over again. So, any questions or information that you would like me to share from the plan?
Is that a new region for us that you read off those counties or something?
No, it's the same region. Every time you have kind of different plans or different, FEMA has a region, KDEM has a region, KDHE has a region, Red Cross does. We're different regions for different things. Now that this plan is out, the next step is to adopt this plan. You always have a choice not to adopt it. Just keep in mind that means that the county, if they do not wish to participate now, would have to do their own hazard mitigation plan. I caution you on that because it's a little pricey. And this one's already paid for us, so.
So we pass the resolution.
Be resolution 2416.
Any other questions or discussion from Marcy? Tremendous amount of work putting that together.
A lot of valuable information, more than just
Yes.
hazard mitigation. I mean, you get to see the population trends. You get to see a lot of things in there.
Mm-hmm.
probably why it's, so big.
All of our risk data is in here. It's a great document. It's not light reading, but it is a really great document. So that's why I do print a copy and have it available in my office. Anybody can look at it, and again, anybody can look at it online. So it's one of those things where this is not top secret. You know what the population looks like, you know what hazards we have, we're high on tornadoes and really low on tsunamis. So, I mean, for most of us, we're pretty aware of what our hazards are, so. A big one, and the big change this year where we went up high on it and is of high importance is cyber incidences. That's the big change. For the hazards chart, they pretty much all stay the same. Extreme temperatures, severe weather, severe winter weather, tornado, hazardous materials, infrastructure, transmittable disease because of COVID. But the big one that got added and is now high is cybersecurity incident. So that is the biggest change from the last hazard mitigation plan.
Any other significant changes?
No, all of them are pretty much the same. You have on your, I had to put a tab where it is, but like on your hazards chart, they still have ag infestation, dam failure, drought, earthquake, flood, wildfires. They're still all on there for our region. So the biggest change was they added the cybersecurity, and that went to high.
It just seems like fires are being a big
That's-
one.
That's the one that was kicking up in my head, and I didn't, it wasn't popping out at me, so.
Well, and the reason why fire isn't as high for Marion County, if you're looking in the individual counties, remember the Doyle Creek and the Middle Creek didn't make FMAG standards. So they don't make the federal, they're over 1,000 acres, so they're reportable to the state. And Kansas Forestry, we work with them to report that. But we didn't burn like Reno County.
Right.
So it depends on how big your fire is.
Yeah, if you have fire breaks.
And just a little plug for our fire departments. We're one of the few counties that have a wildland fire group in our task force. And our guys are, our firefighters in our area, we're real good at getting on it fast and getting the resources here fast to get it put out fast, because we also are lucky enough to have a lot of farmers and ranchers who they see a fire going on, they come out and assist with all kinds of equipment that normally some of those other counties don't have readily available. So we are very lucky in our county with the assistance.
Very good. Any other questions? Or if not, I would move that we pass resolution 2024-16 adopting the Kansas Homeland Security Region G Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Gehring. Questions, comments? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carried by a vote.
Just so you know, next steps, FEMA has approved this plan, so now that you guys have adopted it, it will go out on the county website under plans and documents for emergency management.
Big bites in it.
Pretty big. Lloyd doesn't like it
Please don't
when,
crash our website.
Lloyd doesn't like it when I even sent that to you. He's like, do you have to have big files? The only other thing, I did send out the 6-month update for EM. You'll see that, I believe Tina included that in the packets. Is there any questions, concerns? Do you want me to change any focus areas? You know, is there anything that you saw there that jumped out at you that you had questions about? Anything like that? I didn't put my response actions on there.
There was some problems with a Nexi. I can't find it right now. What's
Nixle?
Yeah, what's Nixle?
Nixle is the old emergency alert system that Marion
Okay.
County used. And we are now part of Everbridge.
Right.
Everbridge bought Nixle.
Okay,
We still receive the service for free because Homeland Security pays for our region to get Everbridge. However, in December of 2025, they are doing away with Nixle completely. And so we're getting everybody to switch over to an Everbridge account. Now, the benefits of having an Everbridge account is you're not limited to alerts just from this county. So, like, for example, let's say Tina had family in Harvey County and she would like to get alerts and know when something's happening in Harvey County. For me, I get alerts from every county because usually storms are coming from that way, so I wanna know their alerts before they happen to me. A citizen can choose to sign up for Harvey, they can choose to sign up for Sedgwick, they can choose to sign up for different counties that are part of this Everbridge system and not just get Marion County alerts. So that's kind of the cool thing, but we're working to, Nixle is not very user-friendly, so we have to manually go through one at a time. And there's a little over 2,000 people in Nixle, so we're sending out, which some of you may have gotten emails on that from us, but we're sending out email messages and everything like that to try to get everybody switched to Everbridge, because some of those Everbridge wasn't really updated frequently, so there's some people on there that actually are no longer with us, and we don't want to be sending Everbridge messages out to phones that don't exist anymore. So.
It's funny that you said that I could get Harvey County alerts, because I actually do, because I live close, like in Peabody, we're really pretty close to Harvey County, so right next. So when they have a storm coming, then I kind of already know.
It gives you a nice heads up.
Who's next?
I get so many alerts. So the weather, national weather,
Service,
and KWCH, and they all just pop up, and it's like, some of them think I'm somewhere else, so they said there's a lightning strike and it's clear blue sky. So it starts getting really confusing.
And it's better to have, I know they get annoying, but it's better to have 5 than none. So I'm biased. I work in emergency management, but I'd prefer somebody had 5 rather than didn't have any alert messages, so.
any other questions on Marcy's report? A lot of activity. It's a lot going on. Congratulations on your certification.
Thank you. Thank you. That was, I don't know if you guys are aware, but that was the first time they brought that to Kansas. Normally you have to travel to Anniston to get that class at EMI, and they brought the whole basic academy out to Kansas. So we were in one of the first groups to graduate, so that was pretty cool. So I went to Topeka instead of Virginia or Alabama.
The taxpayers appreciate it.
Yeah, that was
That's the next thing, get Laura to build us a center here, central United States.
Yeah, all the national training in Marion County.
Oh, that would be nice.
Look at her eyes.
Oh, yeah. I've got ideas for that one. Sorry.
No, lots of training, but I'm sure there was a lot of really, really good information.
If you want to, I have all the books for
Yeah,
your
I'm
classes.
sure you have all.
But just one, and I'll make it quick, I promise. Okay.
We got
so
time.
There
We got
was this class called Science of Disasters, and I'm sorry, but everybody should take this class from kindergarten all the way up to high school. It was fantastic. It was a class, and it was only 3 days, and they should have made it a week, but it did every single disaster you can imagine. I learned about landslides, I learned about tsunamis, I learned about earthquakes, I learned all that kind of stuff. I learned about hurricanes. I mean, I already knew about tornadoes and everything. I'm Midwest, I live with those, but it was fascinating. And it's not just how you respond to those, but then it is also the science of them. So I learned, and I'm kind of a weather geek anyway, but I learned so much more about the jet stream than I even knew. So it was so much fun. That was a good class. It was a really good class.
It's nice to see you can show a little enthusiasm.
Oh, that one. We even did science experiments. It was a good class. Very good class.
We got our money's worth.
So, yeah. But if you ever wanna see any of those, I got notes, I've got binders, so.
Any chance of a tsunami?
You'd be surprised, there is not
Actually would.
zero, we are not at zero for those. Because of the simple fact that not an actual tsunami like might hit Texas, but we have all that weather that comes up that is because of that tsunami. So they were teaching us about them because it does affect our weather patterns, and anybody from Kansas knows. You know, when we see a hurricane or a tsunami someplace, we know it's gonna affect us eventually. So they showed, even though we won't get the initial wave, it's kind of spot on, wasn't it? Even though we don't get the initial wave, we are going to get something from that weather. It's going to change the fronts that come into the Midwest, and it's going to change how the jet stream functions, because you got a massive mass of wind and everything like that coming in from like the Gulf of Mexico, so.
Please don't ask her any more questions, Brad.
I have 3 follow-ups.
I tend to geek out a little bit about weather.
I like it. I like it.
Marcy, I got one.
Yes, sir.
I noticed there seems to be lots of meetings out in the building in the evenings.
Yes.
Who's, the fire chief used it?
EMS is the main one who has been using it for trainings.
Okay.
They've had a lot of trainings out there. Krista's gonna be using it for a meeting for the, one of her health department groups. Fire chiefs use it. Fire chiefs have meetings sometimes every other month, except during harvest. It ends up 2 months that they do that span. But yes, they do it. Later on, I will have a local emergency planning committee meeting there. Right now, we're meeting at the high schools to do emergency services tours while we're there, but so yes, it is getting quite a bit of use. You already noticed planning and zoning is using it
When I go
too.
by at night, I can see cars there, which is good. I see you guys are using it.
Definitely. Tina's used it for some meetings as well. We use a budget meeting there, so.
Anything else from Marcy? Well, thank you, Marcy.
Thank you.
It's always good to see someone excited about what they do.
Thanks. I know it's geeky, but thank you.
Okay, I know we're actually running early again, but if Josh is, and there he is. Hi, Josh. Hey.
Got a tough act to pull.
Very hard.
You can't out-excite Marcy.
No, thank you.
It's the rough one, solid waste, yeah.
Yeah.
We went over the solid waste and redone it. We met last week and had a meeting, and there was no other changes. I think Tina sent you in the package. So I don't know if there are any questions about it.
So you said there were no major changes?
We did a few little changes. They were highlighted in that package and stuff, but there's no complete major change of anything. So everything, even the other counties, are minor changes, kind of like we were. So
Any new solid waste sites being looked at or anything?
I don't know.
Yeah, regional?
No.
Make it to that meeting.
I did not. I was trying to find the login link and did not. It sounded like you had to be there.
Yeah, you had to be there. They do that once every 5 years when they do that big.
So I was
They say
struggling.
it's a big, but it wasn't.
On Wednesday, I was sitting there looking for a link, and at that point, I was 8 hours away, so there's no way I was gonna make that meeting.
Yeah. Somebody said, "Well, don't you have?" I said, "Yeah, he probably usually would have been here." I said, "But he's been busy, so."
I was trying to log in. I just could not find a login link.
I could have patched you in just to kind of listen.
I should have just called you, that probably would have worked.
Okay, any questions for Josh?
So this does require a motion and a vote to approve by the commission.
Then I would move to approve the solid waste management plan 5-year worksheet for the region of Harvey, Marion, and McPherson County as presented.
Second.
Commissioner Dalkey, second. Any other questions, discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried. A lot of
Well, we do a little change, through every year, so it's a normal, just come up and have you check it over. And
like the other one, there's a lot of information in there.
there is a lot of information, yes.
Not 700 pages.
Not 700 pages, unfortunately.
No, it's not like Marcy.
Do we have one to sign?
I think that all he requires to
Just
is
approve.
the
Just-
minutes.
Yeah, just the minutes, and
Okay.
I gotta, of course, we put it on the deal, so next week when they get approved minutes is when
That's all I need.
that's all I need is showing it was approved and it's confirmed, so.
All right.
Put your trailer purchase request in the packet.
Okay. I know we did talk a little bit about a trailer for the side-by-side, cause I miscalculated last year. I went through Circle D, talked to them, and then Jost. Circle D was $5,930, and then Jost, which would have been Hillsboro Industries aluminum trailer, was $10,500.
Not quite the same. Steel versus aluminum. So.
Yeah. I tried to stay pretty local on the whole deal and so.
What you been using to haul it?
Well, as long as I don't load it up with water, I'd use the little trailer, but the one we had for the mower and stuff, it's fine on that, but last year when I did this, I overcalculated the water weight. Didn't even think about putting water weight on it to transport it too, so, yeah.
Yeah, it makes it heavier.
The lifespan of the trailer, 10-year.
I bet I could probably get longer than that, it's not gonna be an everyday, hauling.
Chemicals, corrosiveness versus steel versus aluminum. Is there any benefit?
No, there's not. A lot of people use aluminum, a lot of people use steel. It does, the steel one has a wooden floor, so.
Aluminum's not a lot lighter, but
Yeah.
if it's corrosive, aluminum's gonna hold up.
Yeah.
It's gonna last 10 years one way and 5 years another. You have to look at those aspects.
The steel trailer will haul up to 12,000 pounds. The aluminum was only 9,900 pounds. So there's the big difference in there. Yeah.
Good questions.
I think Hillsboro Industries a year round too.
Yeah, maybe 2 sometimes.
You want something?
Okay. Any other questions on the bids?
I'm moving forward with Circle D, knowing that all my answers, the questions have been answered, so.
Motion?
Yes.
Motion by Commissioner Goering to accept the bid from Circle D on the trailer for noxious weed department, $5,930. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Crowfoot, any other questions? Not all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Thank you, Josh.
This is just kind of what, I presented here 2-3 weeks ago with what we've been spraying. This is everything else on top of what we have done and been doing lately.
We appreciate maps.
So it works easier for me too, keeping track of it, so.
That's a win-win. Maps are good. What in particular were your main targets?
We've been doing a lot of bindweed. I've been mixing in some areas where I know there's some Cerisa. I threw in some Escorter Remedy, and hitting that at the same time as I'm hitting the bindweed.
What's the Logan?
Yeah, getting close.
Good deal.
I send them up in an area. I try to pick different areas every time we go. We was gonna go this morning, but I said, let's go check the wind. I said, there wasn't a breath of air out there, and now we have the wind, and it's too late to get going on them today, so we're hoping for tomorrow.
You notice they're all vertical stretches at Logan, right? Not a lot of crossroads over there.
Rain and no wind or?
Most of them, that's right.
We want to keep between.
Just stay in that direction.
I can go 3 to 15 mile an hour, but if I add escort or remedy, then it's 3 to 10 mile an hour is the only way I can spray. Because the one with the lowest or the highest and the lowest, top speed's got to be the lowest. So it drops it to 3 to, so I only have 7 mile an hour to play with.
And you can't spray at 0.
I can't spray at 0 because it's got to be a minimum of 2 or 3 miles an hour, depending on which chemical I'm spraying.
That's like non-existent, 2 or 3 miles.
It wasn't.
You're gonna go out at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you got a few hours in the morning and a few hours in the afternoon.
Yeah, hardly ever.
Is the Cereza kind of concentrated in certain areas?
It is. There's a spot down around Burns that I've been, I've had people call in and say they're seeing it in the ditch. So there, some areas around Hillsboro, Lehigh, up Durham. So it's kind of just a little path and stuff. But most of it come out of CRPs.
Yes.
Back in the day when they were.
Found 2 little patches in my pasture. I didn't get them sprayed in time, so I mowed them all down, raked them up, bagged them, so I could try them again next year.
Other than that, that's all I really had.
Any questions for Josh?
Do you get very many requests to come out and spray a certain road?
We did get a call Friday about one area, so I said, well, let's go back down and double check the crops. I said, can't spray, no wind today, but I said, find an area there and start working your way back. So I got them out looking, and they're making a map of where they can go in, load 400 gallons up, and go spray.
Very good. Other questions?
Does our public know that we're doing this again?
How do you get the word out?
Well, that's what I'm getting at. I mean, people's got to know to call before they do call.
I guess word of mouth, and I don't know if you want to put something on the website.
Yeah,
I know the guys were out scouting around Gossel last week, and they stopped in the grocery store, and several farmers had stopped them and talked to them and asked them what they were doing.
There you go.
They were excited that they were actually out, at least getting areas pinpointed, and so they can get out and sprayed. So they're getting out there, they're seeing them. So
Is that, we asked this, is that something that we could incorporate that Publix?
Yes, that's already started.
yeah, we're working on that. So I've been working with Vicky and Steve and them on trying to figure it out, what we can do, and try not to mess up their stuff, but keep
I should say the process to establish it is getting started, the coordination. But once that's in place, then if you got road rebuilds, then they know to follow up on spraying the following year, because that's where
it's gonna come.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, and that would be a huge help, because that's where the sunflowers just go crazy.
It's about bindweed. Bindweed can live in the ground, 50 years or something?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, stir it up and you got it. So I think that'll be a huge help, but they're in the process of coordinating the electronics on it. Anything else? All right, thank you, Josh.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Problem. Appreciate you guys. Have a good day.
All right.
Thanks. Yep.
All right. Brad.
Discussion is really yours. I got some limited input from board, and not surprising at all in terms of those last several, well, the actual last several, but near the end of the resolution, the 2 that I put in there intentionally that are exert a lot of control that we may or may not actually be able to enforce. But I put them there for that discussion because the questions had come up And I'm not advocating one way or the other on that, in terms of local control, or home rule versus, I think it's a good point that was made earlier in terms of the public forum, regarding, I can easily add things like the noxious weed language and some of that in it without any problem at all. And I have samples of different things that I've already drawn to add that, and anything else that you would like to add to it. 5 and 6, both, are putting us in a position of saying we're not gonna recognize it. Can we do that? There's some argument that says absolutely you can, but there's also a reasonable amount on the other side of it saying, they'll legislate you right out of existence if you, in terms of the program or anything that they would do if you attempt to do that. Because that would create, as you can imagine, every county could do this across the United States, and it's gonna make it difficult for that program to even be administered if that were the case. And they,
I give you my 2 cents on that item 6. I'd strike that first sentence.
I had asked Sharon to come just to listen and so forth, so.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
And then I would make an addition to that. After the last and, I think it needs to be any proposed conservation easement be disclosed to adjacent landowners prior to commencement of such easement. I'm not sure if that is done, but that's kind of like a zoning change where all the neighbors are noticed. There's a potential change. You might disagree with me, I don't know.
That sounds similar to a lot split or something like that.
Yeah. That way, nobody's in the dark about, this parcel's gonna be in a conservation easement that lives around it.
Only thing I kind of came up with was an agreement, if an agreement is made with a landowner, with one entity, and it was to move to another entity, I would think that it would need to be brought back to make sure that the landowner has every right to make that agreement with the new entity. So I'd like if you, like when you trade contracts and stuff, sometimes banks move banks and, and you have very little no say. I guess you could withdraw your money, but that's it, But this would make sure that it just didn't move to another entity. And then you just kind of have to accept it because you're within a contract. Would there be any kind of out for the landowner at that point saying, nah, I don't really agree with this company or this?
okay, I thought you were necessarily talking about the existing landowner because it runs with the land as it's proposed right now. You're talking about the entity that holds the
Conservation.
It's the dominant tenement, okay.
So if they were to migrate, so this was a private easement or not a private, but a conservation easement entity, and then they were just to hand off all of their stuff to another entity. And the landowner is kind of trapped.
A private land trust, conceivably, its purchaser or assigner, I think, would have to be another private land trust. They couldn't assign that to the federal government. You're the guy that ought to know.
I would have to check with my lawyers on that, because I am not one, but I would agree, I know for a fact that the Nature Conservancy, we are the backups in some other private land trusts that are like that. So if they were to go underwater, we would be there to take on that liability if need be.
So it'd always be a private land trust.
Well,
I can look into that for you, sir.
Because what we wouldn't want to see is a federal governmental agency being assigned that conservation easement. Then it's a whole new game.
The only point I was getting at is if it changed between the two parties that originally set it up, a new agreement needs to be come up with.
Are you running that both ways?
If the land is sold?
Well, Not necessarily, because I think once you're bound, then the new landowner knows what they're getting into, kind of like an oil.
Yeah,
kinda like an
That's
oil-
what I was asking.
An oil pipeline that's running through a property, you have to accept that it's there. You can't tell them to move it. But if the entity holding the conservation was to change hands, then that would open up the door for the property owner to reevaluate. And that would handle the federal thing too. It would handle both.
Could I comment on that, or is that
Yeah.
inappropriate?
I think Steve's brought us enough information that I think we should listen to him a little bit.
Sure, Steve, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, on the easement I'm working on with Ranch Land Trust of Kansas, there's specific language that says if they're no longer able to enforce the easement or they cease to exist, then the easement would then be assigned to another land trust that had similar goals, and it'd be a public nonprofit, same type of entity, and then that transfer would have to be approved by a court of competent jurisdiction. So we have very specific language on what happens when the easement changes hands or the land changes hands.
So Steve, it's also in yours, in terms of that dominant tenement, which would be the one that a land trust would hold, for example, because you're subservient to that if there were a change of ownership from you to another private landowner, that also triggers the potential for that review?
I'd have to read it again. I think it might, which probably isn't a bad idea.
And again, all of this could be legislated right out of our hands in a lot of ways, but if it's recognized by a court as not being a taking. If you have a copy of that, I'd sure like to get it.
Okay, I can give you a work in progress copy.
That'd be
We're
fine.
early in negotiations,
Yeah.
but I can give you some language we're talking about if Ranch Land Trust is okay with me doing that.
Yeah, if they're okay with it, I sure would like to see it. That would help.
She was online.
Okay, I'll see what I can do.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got the transfer issue. Okay. So let's go back to number 6. If you strike the first sentence, then moving into the second sentence, Marion County will only recognize permanent county conservation easements on and on. So what does recognize mean? Does that mean authorized? Does that mean take legal responsibility for? If it recognizes that
It was intentionally done in a generic sense so that all of those things can be discussed. It depends on what you want. And also, again, I'm not going to tell you that we put it in there and it shall be so. Necessarily, it's challengeable as it exists right now. This is still, to some extent, a work in progress. In
Right,
terms of the entire
well,
program.
and in that process, then what does recognize mean?
Yeah, the way I envisioned it, that the county, to the extent that we would have any form of ability to regulate and or, enforce that recognition
It's kind of a non-binding word, right?
is intentionally.
Yeah.
No, it's non-binding then.
Well, it's basically your intent. It's kind of like developing a policy that you can always make exceptions to. But what it does is, we talked about doing this as a policy instead of a resolution. I've just done a hybrid in the form of that language. I can make it so that it is, if you pass it, we mean for it to be absolute and that, it is binding, or that, nope, it's just advisory on our part, that we're not necessarily, we want to at least be aware of it. We do want to have some element of oversight or at least knowledge about what's transpiring within the county. But it's not necessarily something that we're gonna go ahead and assert the rule of law on.
So what's the process if the county commission decides not to recognize a privately negotiated conservation easement?
Again, it depends upon how the entire program is developed, because again, we're getting into the same situation that we were trying to avoid. In that we're regulating what a private landowner chooses to do. For example, if Steve wants to negotiate one of these, I don't advocate that you get in the middle of what a private landowner wants to do with his land.
Right. I think that we're trying to stay away from that, and yet
But if they feel like
address the entirety of the issue. But if the conservation easement may be a very small part of this 30 by 30.
if the landowner,
Maybe not even part of it. I mean, conservation easements have been around for a long time. And I'm not about to tell a landowner he can't do it, because they're doing it in Nebraska now.
And as you can tell, when you look, in terms of those executive orders that I cited, this thing is as broad as it can possibly be, and it's an awful lot of different programs into it.
You know, what I took from it is they're looking for union jobs.
Yeah.
Every other paragraph is preserve a high-paying union job.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue that potential.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, yep. Sharon, would you like to come up?
You can have a chair.
Come on, we want you in the spotlight.
you gotta get close enough to the mic.
Yes.
Can I have some input on number 6?
Yes, please.
I feel like it leaves a lot of ambiguity the way it's written. I understand where you're going with that. It leaves some leeway, but the problem is if there were perhaps to be a perpetual easement assigned to a piece of ground, and then later down the road, someone approves some type of development on that piece of ground, then is Marion County liable for that?
Could very well be. And again, this was done as a draft for purposes of raising the discussion, which is exactly what it's doing.
Yes.
I'm not satisfied with, passing this the way it is. The intent was exactly what you just mentioned, for it to have some ambiguity so we could flesh out, what do you really want? Or what do you envision? Or what does the public really want?
This is what we asked him for.
Sure.
So that way it could be hashed out.
It just concerns me that,
I don't disagree with that either.
there's really no teeth to portions of this, which is what the intent was. But then also, at what point can we be held liable if later down the road, something is approved?
This can easily go from a 2-page resolution to something that is.
We don't need a Marcy resolution.
I was just thinking of that, and I thought, well, I'm just not gonna drag her through this. But one of the ones I've oftentimes created that you look at and go, why? I can easily do that, and do exactly what Sharon's mentioning, and specify when we regulate and when we don't, and how we do it and why we wouldn't, and all of that can be placed in here, but it becomes really an onerous document.
Resolutions still are full of bullet holes.
That seems like the longer, the more
The
problem.
longer, the more holes there are.
And you may or may not know, I mean, I really feel like a letter in opposition would be the best route to take, but that's just my personal opinion based on the research that I've done. I understand that you're trying to write the resolution to have something documented. However, I think that we should be careful not to make policy out of this.
Particularly in terms of advancing that particular perspective, the fact that we don't know federally, and to what extent the state itself, in addition to individual governmental entities such as counties, are going to weigh in on this thing and regulate it themselves. Just don't have, as you can tell, it's still continuing, and they continue. There's a reason that we've got multiple executive orders in this thing for exactly that reason. Oh, well, we need to add this to it, and we need to say that it's going to be part of the 30 by 30, because we think it has some relevancy and it's tangentially related to what we started to do. Then it gets into those areas that I know have been articulated as of concern, and I get it. I do from my own perspective as a landowner, but it's just a question of how far do you want to go and what would you like to put in this. And I will tell you, as we do it, I can't tell you this is enforceable, you know. We can certainly put it in place.
It is a level, because if I was at the federal government and I was trying to grab some 30 by 30, I would be looking at counties that didn't have this because there's no fight there.
Yeah, you're articulating a position at the very least. So that's you.
Sharon, let me ask you this, if we had no resolution, you were saying maybe like a letter in opposition, how would we even know if someone's applying for a conservation easement?
Okay. So,
I mean, they're not noticing you.
right.
And we don't know now.
So
Right.
we don't regulate private conservation easements on private property as it is.
Yeah.
That's between the landowner and the conservation
Trust.
trust district, whomever they have that conservation easement with. It says specifically in those terms who regulates that. They are not regulated by Marion County. If you breach a conservation easement between an entity and a private individual,
It's a civil
that's
action.
between those two entities, not the county. You know, that's, I struggle with number 6 and number 7 specifically because it's saying that you want Marion County to analyze these conservation or
Or at least bless them. And
right.
that's an issue at times.
And
If
how do
you have
you
the
do
choice to
that?
bless or not, then that means what he's.
Is a conservation easement considered a federal land acquisition? I'm looking at it, I didn't think it did.
I would make the argument that it's more likely not to be, but depends upon the entity
That's
acquiring.
why I had no question about it. I mean, a federal land acquisition in Marion County, I would think we would wanna know about it.
At that point, I don't know that we can say so.
Yeah.
Honestly. And I think that would be regulated at a level much higher than us.
They could just take over the whole county. What are we doing here?
Well, what did they do on the federal land? Come out here and built the reservoir. I mean, that's before our time, maybe day.
Yeah, but I mean, they came out, they negotiated, they came out and negotiated a fair market value with all the landowners.
And those
They
that
didn't
do,
come out and say, we're taking your land because of this flood issue, and you're gonna get paid what? Well, the government's willing to pay. I believe if I remember right, there was appraisals on all of that land.
but ultimately, it did come down to, there were a number of them, like, this is a family farm with 5 generations. I don't care what you pay me, it's not
I'm
worth
not
it.
selling
I
it.
won't do it. So when we got down to the end of those, I looked at this because in relation to this, and I can name I know some of these folks. Ultimately, it was an eminent domain form of an action, similar to what you can be concerned with here. Because in order to get the project done, just like the interstate highway system, we're gonna take it and we're gonna do it for the greater good. And if you can make that argument here, then you can have a conservation easement that becomes federal in nature. If they adopt that as, this is a program we're gonna go ahead and endorse and put in place. But that's if, and right now that's not the case.
And it's been a long time since I've served on a eminent domain committee to determine fair market value. I have. Has that changed in the last 20 years? It's still a kind of a local group that they put together to determine that.
Qualified appraisers, the court approves 3. The landowner picks 1, the entity attempting to acquire picks 1, and the third is agreed upon by those 2. That's the fairest way they've ever been able to seem to figure that out. That continues statutorily to be the case and has been for pretty much my whole career. And I've been through it way too many times.
So can I ask this? What happens when the Board of Commissioners denies an easement on private property?
We blame you, pretty much.
That's exactly what happens.
The recommendation will come from the Director of Planning and Zoning, and I'll say, I don't know.
I'm
She said it was the way we should do it.
staying one step ahead of this deposition, Brad.
I don't think the consensus of the commission is that we want to get into that.
Okay,
But then again, what about the future commission?
Future commissioners, I don't know.
that's just
I don't
it.
wanna tie their hands.
The commission changes every 4 years, you know, the intent, the agendas, the whatever opinions, they change over the course of years. So if you have language in here saying that the commissioners will review each and every one of these and decide whether it's a good idea or not, first of all, you may come up against almost like a variance, like you said, this person could do it, but this person
Precedentially,
cannot.
yeah.
You're setting a precedent.
Consistency.
It's not consistent. And then what do? Tell them they can't file an easement on their private property?
So, but you keep bringing up number 5, number 6, number 7, and all of them keep talking about federal land acquisitions, not easements. On bringing it back to easements, where
That to me, federal land acquisition is not a conservation easement.
So
And
they're
on it-
talking more like a preservation type scenario,
Well, it'd be more like another
not
reservoir.
federal, right?
Yes, sir, private nonprofit.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we're conflating two things, and
But number 6 specifically does say, consider the impact of each permanent conservation easement executed.
Which I can
within the
easily remove,
jurisdiction.
you know,
I can't see the commission wanting to be.
That's why I asked for that to be struck.
Yeah.
And in number 2, I'm not sure if this was mentioned before either, but in number 2, the board further opposes the designation of Marion County land as part of the 30 by 30 program. I would suggest the board further opposes the mandatory designation of Marion County land. I mean, we have to look at both sides of this. A property owner has rights on either side of this. I feel like, you know, if they want to file the perpetual easements and the restrictive covenants and those things on their own private property that last for eternity, I guess that's their prerogative.
That's why I asked for the additional language to where all adjacent landowners at least know that conceivably, maybe not, but conceivably, it could affect the value of their land.
And then I kind of heard you talking about this too, and maybe I'm not sure where that line is at, but when you put a restriction on a type of land use overlay, at what point does that become a quasi judicial decision, and when is it a governing body decision?
like in a typical setting, when is it a Board of Zoning Appeals kind of an issue versus one that is recommendation only and comes to you as the final deciding factor at this level with an appeal to district court and moving it into the court system? More questions than answers from my perspective, I'll be candid.
Yeah.
You invited me to the table, sorry.
Number 5, I had a question. The board maintains that any land acquired under the 30-30 program, acquired by whom? I mean,
Yeah, again, I mean, it can, I left it wide open. And you can change that to be, you know, if you want to get back to the federal system, try and note it that way in some fashion so that it's only governmentally acquired as opposed to these private land trusts and that kind of thing. And we can make that, flesh that out so there's a bright line between the two if you like. You know, in terms of the governmental acquisition versus a private property acquisition between two parties at arm's length. Because in that setting, they don't have an eminent domain potential. Government does.
It sounds like.
In some ways, I'd just like to get conservation easement completely out of that, but there's always a possibility that you could get a conservation easement administered by the federal government.
That's where my thought came in, was if it changed between this entity or here to another entity, any entity, then all of a sudden we have a clawback, something. That way they can't shift it from private and then secretly under the table it to the federal government. Because all of a sudden now you've changed the entity.
And you'll note that even some of those original ones that were distributed to you that you've got access to mention expressly the conservation easements. And I, in asking if they have a county counselor, and several of those counties did not, that was part of their concern as well. Those could easily be usurped or become. And again, I'm not taking a position on any of that either way, just that that was a possibility. And so they expressly noted the semantics, the nomenclature of conservation easements.
If that's in their contract anyway, and we echo what I said, what sounds like their contract echoes.
Yeah.
We're just double.
That's why I asked for, if Steve can get me a copy of that, I'm gonna.
I'd also like to see a delineation between conservation easements and conservation programs. Conservation programs, I mean, it's 3/4, 80% of the farms in this county, probably have a conservation plan. Maybe a little bit more than that. And those are kind of administered by a local committee to a certain extent. And I certainly wouldn't want to be pulling in anything to do with conservation programs.
That's a very good point, because that is federal.
That is federal, but it
has local oversight.
It's administered locally. It's kind of like a private land trust administering a conservation easement. I mean, kind of relatable.
So we don't want to touch any of that.
No.
I mean, Kansas has done an excellent job of voluntarily signing their lands up. There's 24.8 million acres of land voluntarily placed in conservation reserve programs right now.
I think we have complete agreement on we do not want to interfere in that.
The only issue that I have with that is if they do the same thing they did with Wyoming and eastern Colorado and mandate that as a wildlife corridor. Because boy, you've tied your landowners' hands, period, then, because your fencing laws don't even have any effect under a wildlife corridor. You can have a fence, but your neighbor that buys the section next to you that was all in CRP wants to come out and put some cows on it, cannot put a fence on it. It's a wildlife corridor.
Had you done some work into the corridors? Can you clarify some of that for us?
Not really.
In the process, I think what I'm hearing Commissioner Becker say is they can convert it from a conservation program into a more restrictive corridor. Is that?
That's the proposal.
The way I understand that that's delineated.
Is that
a lot of
possible?
Yes.
It's just CRP after CRP. Well, some of those CRP contracts have come out, and the landowner goes, well, now I want to sell it.
Right.
Well, the next guy comes along and said, well, I'd love to buy that because I got 100 cows I want to put out, and I just found out I can't fence it. So
it stayed in the program for too long that it got swept into a different program?
Well, I'm just saying that if it's part of that wildlife corridor, I don't see how they could.
The landowner should have had some.
Yeah, if they had landowner, that's the reason why this is where I'm coming from. If the landowner doesn't have a say in what program or what thing they're doing, that is wrong.
Right.
But it's their responsibility as landowners to make that negotiation.
That's where your government overreach comes in.
I'm gonna ask, well, I'm just gonna tell you. I'm I've had about 5 or 6 phone calls, including the one yesterday afternoon. He's supposed to call everybody. And all of them's, they're wondering why we're getting into it. They don't agree with us getting into it and trying to do something over them. So, over more or less making the landowner do something. That's just what I'm hearing. I have not had the positive call and come the other way and say, we gotta do this.
Maybe you're close down there to Butler County. Why don't you tell them and go talk to the people in Butler County? Why did they institute a resolution quickly?
I've had a few that told me that we needed to pass it just the way it was. And I said, no, we need to think through. And that's where I said, I'm gonna send it to planning and zoning, and then it's.
I think
we're gonna send it to Brad. We're gonna send it back
I
here.
don't think you're gonna get very many horror stories out of Kansas. I think it's adjacent states where you would need to hear somebody that's kind of gone through something like that to get some input from. I mean, this proposed transmission line, to me, just seems way out of bounds, but the comment period's over.
I will say the people who have an interest in it have a pretty strong preference, because I think, I just try to keep count, I think 11 people have called. One of them kept me on the phone for about an hour, and I haven't even returned all the calls like to Steve, because of that. Not because I don't want to talk to them, just trying to find times that you can devote to it. The one thing that is consistent is we really don't want you telling us in some way what we can or cannot do, and I'm trying to reassure those that have called it. I don't think that's the intent of the board. I think it's just trying to show the appropriate level of concern about how this could negatively impact land use. But the earlier comment too in public forum she made was a good one, that in a lot of our existing programs, including this, the compatibility agreements are available even now on a lot of different programs, and I think that seems to get mentioned frequently, so that land management would still be something the property owner could do. But it doesn't address, if you put it in perpetually and it's there forever, some of that is really the language that's suggested is lockdown. That's something that a property owner's gotta be very aware of. So you can't really legislate that, so.
I don't know how we'd go about seeking input from, some of these areas that have had the issues.
Well, I think the council already has tried to do the research in the areas that have had issues.
Yeah, and I mean, we can invite, if you have a town hall meeting, you can invite some people on. Most of them are more than happy to come and give you their opinion.
I'm sure.
And how accurate.
Yeah.
I don't know, depends on
Depends if they were
how far, if the
affected directly.
commission wants to continue to address it or not.
Keyword opinion.
Yeah, a lot of it's anecdotal, and I'm like, well, okay, do you have a basis for that? Well, just my experience. Well, this program isn't in place yet, so it can't be on the basis of this. No, but my other issues with either an eminent domain proceeding or some form of taking that they'd experienced with the county or the state, that's different as it exists right now than what we're dealing with here. Doesn't mean it can't get that way, but.
Well, that's just it. I wonder how you would keep that part out of a town hall meeting, because a lot of people have experienced, or know people that have experienced eminent domain. And I think a lot of people are thinking that's the way it is.
Well, you succeeded in getting discussion.
And confusing you even more, and I figured that was what was gonna happen. Now, we could go ahead and put an absolute ban in place and then litigate it for the next, beyond my career life, and give me something to do.
Don't look at me.
Yeah.
Have Sharon in the deposition and look at her and say, why'd you do that? I don't understand.
Well, I just don't wanna get away from, the whole thing is to talk about the 30 by 30.
Yeah.
That's a Biden era mandate that, what is it, not a mandate, an executive order.
Yeah.
that's where it needs to be targeted. It doesn't need to be targeted at every other program there is.
The problem,
To target that.
problem that you get slapped in the face with immediately is when you read those executive orders, they kind of encompass virtually every program there is. Some of which have had really positive impacts to a lot of people, and others that not quite so much. And then, okay, environmental concerns, renewable energy concerns, the ability to go ahead and produce services across the United States that become, that get into states' rights issues, you know, like transmission lines or irrigation systems, or, you know, we've got states that are screaming, you know, out west for water, or they're gonna dry up and blow away, literally. It's a lot of material.
And I understand where a lot of people come from, where they say this is the kind of issue that needs to be how do you pronounce it?
Adjudicated.
Adjudicated. Okay, if it ends up in a court, I mean, you're a lawyer, you're a judge. How long could an issue this large be in our court system? But yet the 30 by 30 could still be going on while it's in court? Could be decades.
When I was in high school, we began the process with Colorado. Water rights, we're not done yet. That answers your question.
Yeah, there you go.
That was just a couple of years ago, I realized, but that was some time ago from my perspective.
Brad made a joke.
Yeah, and water rights have been decades.
So on, it will continue, different scenarios continue to arise, so that gets added to the action.
And yet, that's one of our biggest, in the end, that's our biggest issue. We have to have water. But, you know, another thing that concerns me in Marion County is we have a navigable river.
Mm-hmm.
A few.
We found that out with our bridge.
We have a few.
Now, if you have a navigable river, you've also got some potential federal government takeover of things.
You bring in at least 3 federal government agencies immediately as soon as you declare it navigable. So, commerce, transportation.
They show up and they say, what the, it's a niche.
Now, I can make these changes you've suggested if that's of value. And then talk with Sharon some more about her concerns and see if we can find language that sort of works. But whatever, you tell me where you want to go with this from this point.
Well, what I'm hearing is there's the main concern is 3030 executive order.
Yes.
The next main concern would be federal acquisition of property or land. Concerns we do not want to interfere with are private negotiations between landowner and conservation agencies. We do not want to interfere with conservation programs.
Yeah.
Getting all those?
Yes.
But am I right?
Right.
Yes.
That's what I'm hearing. So I guess what I would challenge our scribe, master of
Direct.
ideas, to try to massage the verbiage more to that focus.
Do you think
You know, there's a lot of gap in there. The conservation easements is one I completely stayed away from. We definitely, there would maybe be a concern on permanent, but you know, I do not see the county getting involved in approving or recognizing. And that we may have a difference of opinion.
I don't think we want to go there.
Okay, then we've got an agreement on that.
Initially, legislation.
Initially, I think,
If they were to transfer without the landowner's knowledge,
I think-
then I think the county should back the landowner.
I think
That's the
knowledge,
landowners, that's their responsibility.
I get it, but sometimes.
You're gonna have the county come in and review every landowner agreement when it
No.
changes hands?
No.
So then which ones do you pick?
I think you'd get to the point where if you were a county commission and you were authorized to approve every conservation easement, it would be one way or the other. You'd approve all of them or you'd approve none. There wouldn't be any in between.
And if you approve them all, then what's the point?
Yeah.
And if you can't approve, then you can wind up in court.
I'm not about to step in somebody's private landowner rights.
Well, I think we got some.
And I think some people have been concerned that that's what we're doing. We're not. We're trying to preserve it.
And you can file anything you want to file. I mean, people do it all the time. So what do you do when someone files something that you didn't see coming in? I mean, our Register of Deeds is required to file whatever.
As long as it's legally permitted in terms of form,
Right.
she doesn't have a choice.
So how do you retroactively handle that?
Yeah, there's some of that that's grandfathered, nothing you can do about it. It becomes specialized enough that it's kind of a series of land use control kinds of things, which is really more Sharon's job than mine. And then the management of that is really your county administrator. So if you want, I can just hand it off to those.
Yeah, I'll write a resolution, you tell me what you want.
I think I see the answer already. It's very simple.
Me too.
Just don't do it.
I do appreciate your, you're trying to portray what it is that the board wants through this resolution. I mean, I think that.
But it creates exactly what you and I have talked about before. It creates a lot of, I don't want to call them unintended consequences, just ones that are hard for us to manage. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it and that you can't do it. I just need to continue to play with it a little bit, I think.
And the discussion is an important part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, this is valuable to me
We have to
because
have these discussions.
and I think that the suggestions that were made along with Sharon's comments are very useful in terms of me switching it up a little bit, making it less obtuse.
Statutes too, I mean, fence viewing.
Yeah.
And I'd hate to see the scenario in a zoned county where a land use issue would jump the planning and zoning commission and goes right to your commission. I wouldn't want to see that.
Okay. Anything else?
Just want to protect the landowners.
Yeah, it's easy.
I don't know how to do that.
Hire 6 lawyers, and then you can.
Yeah. Without involving. That would involve hiring 2 for each 6.
There you go.
Yeah.
Magic word.
Yeah.
I'll sit back and watch.
Yeah.
Get
So
the
your
popcorn.
deposition comes up. Okay, let me massage that some more and bring it back next week,
Be 2.5.
at least. Yeah.
Thank you, Sharon. Appreciate your input.
Definitely.
Put the magic wand to that one.
All right, we got the Burns Fiber taken care of. Commissioner comments? Okay.
Before you,
Okay.
sorry, adjourn, I have a couple things real quick.
Yes.
I was asked if any of you want to ride in the emergency management truck with Marcy for the parade and throw candy out. So if you want to volunteer for that, please let me know. You don't have to say it in the meeting. You can tell me after. That's
If
fine.
anyone wants to let,
I don't think that anybody that's running for chair
Should
needs
be
to
using
sign
it
in
for
for
community.
management.
probably should be separate.
Yes.
If it was non-election year, maybe it'd be all right.
So, either one of you two want to ride. I won't be here, so.
No,
They're not
I'm
running.
not up for election, Randy.
There you go,
He's
that's-
the one that needs to be
that's-
afraid.
No.
I see.
Well, we're not supposed to use any county resources when we're running.
Right, well, no, that wouldn't look quite right.
Right.
Okay, so maybe she can find someone else to help her. And then, our normal meeting schedule, we don't have a meeting on Monday if we're meeting for payday on Wednesday. So that'd be, the next meeting would be payday and other business on the 31st at 9 o'clock. But then the question I have is, do you want to meet the following Monday, the day before the election?
No.
Ashley has a
Yes,
pretty
the
strong
vote is
opinion
down
on
at this
that.
end.
Well, usually we always try to put that one off. We always-
But we can, cause there's
Last
no.
few years you have.
Yes, sir. Yeah, using it.
Right, it's up to you all.
Well, if anything important comes up, can we just take care of it at the payday meeting?
Yeah, I mean, we can put as much business on payday as we need to, since it's a
It's regular.
regular meeting.
That's, do we have agreement on that?
Yeah,
Any strong feeling that we need a meeting the day before the election?
and we don't have a meeting on the 29th, right?
That's right.
Correct. So today, 22nd, next meeting is the 31st.
And then the,
Next
potentially the
following
next one would be the 12th.
Weekends.
I'm gonna hammer down, and knock out my deadline.
Which the 12th will be a busy, we got budget hearing, bridge closing hearing.
We have something else that coming up.
Canvas on the 16th.
Yeah, so then there'll be busy. All right.
So is everyone
Yep,
okay
we
with
have a
that?
consensus.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for catching that. Anything else?
No.
I did want to mention, fair's going on, county fair, so everybody go out and have fun, the weather's good. Enjoy the Marion County Fair. With that, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Gary, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed nay. Motion carried 5-0, we are adjourned. Thank you very much. Are you enjoying this?